Welcome to the show. I have a great show planned for you this week. Later on, I'll have with me local radio and TV show host Howard Monroe. We'll be talking all about the upcoming general election in November here in West Virginia in the local area. But first, we'll talk about some of our usual features. And hard to believe that summer is over. It seems like I was just telling everybody, hey, summer's here and now it's over and fall is upon us. So I want to start off with a quote this week along those lines. And this comes from American author Hal Borland. And he said, "Summer ends and autumn comes, and he who would have it otherwise would have high tide always and a full moon every night." I think that's a great quote, because you really can't, appreciate summer and the fun that comes with summer, all the warmth, unless you do have the seasons. And I've always thought I wouldn't want to live somewhere where you don't have the different seasons. I enjoy it, even though winter's not my favorite always. It does make you appreciate the summer even more. But I love the fall. I mean, I love everything about the fall. I love football season. I love the smell of the leaves when they fall. I love the crisp evening air. It's just a great time of year. My wife's birthday is even in the fall, another reason to like it. So, it's just a special time that I've always enjoyed. And here in the local area, maybe it's because I grew up here, Ogilvy Fest is always so much fun. That'll be coming up here in a couple weeks, October 5th through the 7th this year. And if you haven't been, or maybe it's been a while since you've been, there's just something for everyone there. You can go up, you can walk around, you can see artists, you can see people putting on different plays or skits. You can have great food, you can listen to the music. It's actually the Ohio County Fair. A lot of people forget that. Things like the Marshall County Fair, the Belmont County Fair are really promoted kind of individually as the fair, but part of Ogilvy Fest is the Ohio County Fair. So you see the kids up there with the animals, and it's just a great time for the entire family. And of course, fireworks always on Saturday night. So a lot of fun, and encourage everyone to get up and check that out. I always continue to say that Ogilvy is truly one of the treasures here of this valley. When you look at the different things that it has to offer, it's one of the big reasons that I came back here to this valley. And I recently did a little video on social media that I was asked to do with the hashtag #MyOgilvy movement. And it's different people in the community just talking about what Ogilvy means to them. And it was a lot of fun to do that, just for me to think about all the different ways that it's been a big part of my life through the years, from the time I was a young kid when my mom and dad were taking me up there. We were going through the parks and going to Ogilvy Fest, and I learned to ski, up until then, having the rehearsal dinner for my wedding there, and now having special occasions for my own kids up there, or after their baptisms and things of that nature. So just a great, wonderful place, and a great place to bring people from out of town so they can truly see the beauty of West Virginia when they come to this area. We're going to take a break. When I come back, I'll have with me Howard Monroe. We'll be talking all about this year's general election in November. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Recommended by the highest authorities. Danoon Lumber.
Looks like a bad one's coming. Yeah, right?
Welcome back to the show. My favorite time each week is when I have a guest with me, and this week's no different. I have with me local radio and TV show host Howard Monroe. Howard, thanks for being here on the show today.
I appreciate you asking me. We're in busy season. By the way, I got to say, I like the Borland quote, but I could do without winter. I just want to say that I could do without the winter.
And it seems like every year that goes by, I feel a little bit more that way. And you got a couple years on me, Howard. So I get it. But I do. I enjoy the winter even still. I mean, I enjoy seeing some snow come down on occasion, and just that cold winter air. And being in South Bend for 7 years when I was in school, this feels kind of mild actually compared to that. So it's not too bad.
But I am like you. I can't imagine being in a place where it's the same.
Yeah.
All year long.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about this upcoming election here in November. It's going to get a lot of attention, already is, and the signs are starting to come out now in the yards, and starting to see some of the spots. Of course, some of them have been on the air for a while now. A lot of money pouring into some of these races, but let's start at the top of the ticket with the U.S. Senate race. Incumbent Senator Joe Manchin, being challenged by Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, and Morrisey has some big names that he's taken down here over the last couple of election cycles, and has defeated Evan Jenkins here even in the primary this year. Of course, defeated McGraw to become Attorney General. Doug Reynolds ran, who's got a lot of resources and name recognition in the
but
southern
none
part
of
the
them
state.
are Joe Manchin.
They're not, and so that's the interesting thing now is you've got Joe Manchin, who's been around for a long time. Is that name still strong enough to hold off what seems to have been a little bit of a Republican surge here in recent years in West Virginia?
Well, the polling is showing Manchin still is ahead by a pretty comfortable margin, not far ahead, but enough ahead to make him feel comfortable, I think. He's in an awkward position. He likes to tout his Republican credentials on many votes and so on, talks often. I had him on my radio show recently. He says, 60% of the time I vote with Trump, except as I pointed out, Trump still slaps him in the face every time Trump comes to town. So it is going to be an interesting dynamic, but the Manchin name still means a lot. Manchin has, some of his media has turned out to be pretty good lately. Remember he shot the cap and trade bill not too long ago? He's shooting Patrick Morrisey's healthcare lawsuit this time around. I think that's kind of clever, will catch some attention. And so far, from most of what I've seen, Morrisey is still just doing he liked Hillary, he liked Obama, he might vote for Nancy, well, not Nancy Pelosi, but sort of the guilt by association. I have not seen a lot from Morrisey in terms of what he intends to do and what his issues might be. So it's going to be very interesting. If I had money to put on it, I'd put it on Manchin, but I think we're going to see it go down to the evening.
Yeah, I could see, right now looking at it, maybe a 52-48 or something like that margin for Senator Manchin. But I do think it's going to be close as well. And, of course, one of the big issues is going to be turnout. Who turns out in this election and how big is the turnout? It's, the non-presidential years, traditionally the turnout is not as significant. I think that'll be true as well. But what type of turnout will there be? And we'll talk about that as we get through some of these other races. And we've got to, speaking of the United States Congress races, we've got one here in the 1st District, incumbent David McKinley being challenged by Kendra Forshey, law professor at WVU. She was on the show maybe a month or so ago, and enjoyed talking to her. Had never met her, and she beat Ralph Baxter in a primary, and it was an upset in a lot of people's eyes.
It was surprising. It was the surprise of the primary to me.
Yeah, and he was more well-funded than she was, and she's kind of more of a grassroots campaign, but it seems like a go-getter, but does she have enough resources to even really mount a challenge is the question.
And I don't have an answer to that. I talked to her just today. Tomorrow night, she's doing a town hall meeting here in Wheeling. I'm going to moderate that, let people ask her some questions. But Dave McKinley is a powerful opponent. Lots of money behind him. First of all, well-known. Kendra Forshey is a little distressed that he literally ignores her. She's got a little viral video on Facebook with the hashtag say my name. He says, I wish he would just at least say my name. It's the kind of thing that you kind of wish would work, the grassroots support. I won't take large PAC money. I'm going to only raise money from small donors and hopefully from West Virginia. All of that sounds good, and maybe I'm just too old and too jaded, but I still think that name recognition, the power of the money behind him and so on is just awfully hard to overcome.
It really is. I mean, when you're talking about when you can be on the air, on TV, on radio, and people hear your name over and over and over again, and then it kind of drowns out whatever your opponent may be able to do, if she's able to do anything at all on the air. You can only do so much through, especially in a congressional race. If you're talking about a city council race, we got to go to your neighborhood and knock on doors.
That's
you
a different
can do
story.
it.
Yeah.
But when you've got an entire 1st congressional district, and remember there's only 3 in West Virginia, there's a lot of area to cover trying to just go meet people at town hall meetings and things of that nature.
And it is interesting. All 3 of the races are interesting. All 3 of our congressional races are interesting. You have Ojeda, Richard Ojeda down there in the 3rd congressional district going against Carol Miller. You have Tally Sargent going against, I keep wanting to say Evan Jenkins, Alex Mooney. They're going to be interesting races, and in none of those races have any of the Republicans agreed to a debate, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think that's probably strategically wise on their part in a way, because They're just banking on, I think,
the name of the incumbent, power of the incumbency.
The incumbency, and then also that the Republicans have done well in the last couple of elections. So let's not say anything that can maybe trip up the momentum they have going. I want to hear what they have to say. I'd like for them to debate. I want to know what people think, the candidates think about the issues. I want to know what they're going to do, and hey, what have you done, so far, and what are you going to do if you're put into Washington? I want to hear what people have to say. So I wish they would debate. It kind of bothers me when they won't. But
I would agree. To me, I don't understand why any candidate doesn't want to debate at least once. I mean, I do understand the politicking behind it, but why don't you want to? Anybody should sit down next to their opponent and say, "Here's what I believe. Here's what that person believes. Why don't you, the voter, sort this out?"
Speaking of around the state, a lot of attention now to the Supreme Court. Of course, nobody expected any seats to be on the ballot this year, and now there are 2 seats on the ballot. What are now being referred to as Division I and Division II, and the Division I seat there, a number of people, both divisions, but the kind of the front runners have emerged is Tim Armstead, former Speaker of the House in West Virginia, and then Joanna Tabbitt, who's a judge in Kanawha County, are the ones that are kind of shaping up to be the front runners there, and a lot of things still swirling regarding challenges to whether or not Tim Armstead, Evan Jenkins are even eligible to be on the Supreme Court. Lawsuits have been filed challenging their appointments and also their eligibility to be on the ballot. Yeah,
it's going to be really interesting because, of course, I said nobody expected a Supreme Court race to begin with. Now we've got 10 candidates in each of the 2 divisions, 20 candidates we've got to sort through, most of whom we have never heard of, most of whom we just don't know. Now, a handful we do. If Armstead and Jenkins stay on the ballot, and again, there are legal challenges to that, they've got 3 or 4 legs up because they are the 2 names that are quite well known statewide. Both politicians don't come out of a really judicial or legal background. They both are, by definition, I think, lawyers, although the question is being raised about Jenkins technically. But they're the big names. They're the big names. Joanna Tabbitt, I think you're right, is probably the other one in Division I. Senator Kessler, former senator and former gubernatorial candidate Jeff Kessler here in this area, I think has some statewide name recognition and also brings some legal background, so I think he probably is a contender. But the problem, Jamie, with 10 candidates in each of the races is every one of those candidates will have a little constituency.
Yeah.
It will depend on what part of the state they come from and who their constituencies are, but so they're all going to take little bits and pieces of the pie. So the question becomes, how big a piece of the pie you're going to have to actually be the winner?
I think probably 15 to 20%, somewhere in that range is what it's looking like, and and that makes it tough for any of the individuals who don't have the big name recognition. I mean, if it's all divided up like that, there's just such, as you said, 3 or 4 legs up for a couple of folks. And as I said last week on this show, I find it disturbing that that I don't want to see a politician on the Supreme Court. I want to see people who understand the law, have been around it, have practiced it, have ruled on things, and certainly, Judge Tabbitt is a judge, it falls into that category. And then, I've known Senator Kessler a long time, and he's been around the law. I mean, for sure, and he understands the law. When you talk to him about legal issues, he gets it and understands the practicalities of practicing law.
And it's not supposed to be political. These are nonpartisan races now. It used to be run by party, but now these are nonpartisan races, which I think the intent of that was that we wouldn't be putting politicians in there, but hopefully people that are experienced judicially and legally and bring that kind of background to it. It is not what we traditionally consider a political position.
Yeah, and it's an area more than any other on the ballots that you want to see the most qualified, not the most popular. And then you like to see that for every position, but especially with the judiciary.
In the Supreme Court races, you have a very short period of time, really a couple of months from the time they were able to file until the election. They're not going to have time to raise a lot of money, not time to raise a lot of profile. Supreme Court candidates always have a hard time getting their names out anyways, because who pays attention, who knows what you're supposed to look for with a Supreme Court candidate, which brings us back to the big names, the Armsteads, the Jenkins, probably Kessler as well, have a pretty big advantage there.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about some of the local races, including big race for West Virginia State Senate. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Let us help you save it. Belmont Savings Bank. Focused on your future.
So, how was your first day?
Long. So, Josh asked me about you.
Daddy's home. Go get him.
For your home, for your life, for more than 50 years. The Hardwood Specialists. Denoon Lumber.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with my guest this week, local radio and TV show host Howard Monroe. We've been talking about the November election, and let's talk about this race here for the West Virginia State Senate in the 1st District. Incumbent Ryan Ferns being challenged by former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of West Virginia, Bill Ehlenfeld, and really shaping up to be an interesting race here.
This is going to be probably the most interesting race of this area for sure. Bill Ehlenfeld with a really strong name recognition, former federal prosecutor, known up and down. One of the problems anytime you're in for the state Senate is you got to be, normally you have somebody known in 1 or 2 counties, but Ehlenfeld as a prosecutor, kind of well known up and down the panhandle, so that augurs well for him. Ryan Ferns has got a ton of money coming in, not primarily, but a lot of third-party candidate money coming in on his behalf. I'm sure that there aren't too many people who haven't seen ads, who haven't seen flyers in the mail. A lot of money coming in to support Ryan Ferns. I think what Bill Ehlenfeld has in his pocket right now, and he's going to need to rely on a lot, are the teachers. Ehlenfeld was a strong supporter of the teachers during the work stoppage, although Ryan Ferns ended up voting for the teacher pay raise. I think the teachers will remember some of the things that he said during the legislative session, which did not sit well with a lot of teachers. So the old remember in November is going to be really critical to Ehlenfeld's campaign, I think, and particularly will the teachers themselves get out and then motivate others to listen to what they have to say and get out.
I know Bill Ehlenfeld's been working hard. You mentioned name recognition up and down the panhandle. I mean, he's worked in addition to being the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District. It was also in the Ohio County Prosecuting Attorney's Office before that, the Brooke County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So he's worked in 2 of the 3 counties in which the election will be held, in addition to having worked the entire district as the United States Attorney. And he takes a lot of pride in the fact that Senator Byrd was the one to recommend him as the U.S. Attorney, and that meant a lot to him. And I know Senator Byrd was really looked up to by a lot of West Virginians, and I think that will help him as well. The big question is, this is, as you said, money coming in heavy on one side versus maybe the name recognition and some of the hot button issues on the other, and what's going to carry the day. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this plays out. This will be one of the examples where grassroots really will make a difference, or not make a difference, as the case may be. This is a race where it really is going to, I hate to say totally dependent on, but it's really going to depend on how the grassroots get out and how they vote, and how they get their supporters to get out and vote. Well, and are the teachers going to turn out and they're going to vote? Because I think the teachers are for Bill Ehlenfeld, as you mentioned, but are they going to come out and actually be at the ballot box? And there's an issue in Hancock County that may send some of them out. There's a school bond issue up there, and that will probably bring teachers out, which is a good thing probably for Bill Ehlenfeld. It will motivate more teachers to go to the polls. And again, I think he's their natural choice. I'm not saying all teachers will vote for him, but he's their natural choice. Teachers did some rallies around the state this past week. I think it was this past week. I saw some out with signs supporting Ehlenfeld here in the local area this weekend. So I think there is a lot of support for him, and they're trying to show it. But again, more than any race I can think of in recent history, this is going to be one where grassroots will make a difference. Do you get out, and do you get your supporters out? A couple of interesting races for county commission here in the local area too. Ohio County Commissioner Orphe Klempa being challenged by Don Nickerson, and then also in Marshall County, incumbent Bob Miller being challenged by longtime West Virginia House of Delegate Mike Farrow, who's given up his delegate seat to run for commission. And so we got an incumbent Democrat in Ohio County being challenged, incumbent Republican in Marshall County being challenged, and some popular names there, really. Yeah, very popular names. I think Don Nickerson's making a really good run at this, I think.
Orphe Klumpa, a long time a political figure, and certainly been in the county commission office for I think 2 terms. I can't remember exactly. Sort of, you might give him the edge, but I think Nickerson has been running a good campaign, and I think I don't want to phrase this without sounding offensive. I don't mean to be. He is not offensive at all. He's a nice guy, so he can run as sort of the voice of opposition, if you will, and not be coming across as negative. Does that make sense? And so I think that I think Orphe Klumpa's got probably the biggest challenge she's had for a while in this particular race.
You know, it's rare that I find myself saying this, but I know Orphe Klumpa, I know Don Nickerson. I like them both a lot. You know, it's one of those things where almost I say, you know, I wouldn't be upset to see either one of those guys to say that's one of my commissioners. I mean, they're both good guys, and I'd be interested to see who can get more of their supporters to come out on election day. Down
in Marshall County, I think Mike Farrell fended off a pretty aggressive challenge in his primary from Jake Padlow, former commissioner there, and Padlow was very aggressive in going after Mike Farrell in the primary, and Mike Farrell was able to get past that. So I think that he's kind of battle tested already this year, which is a positive thing. Bob Miller, again, incumbent, so you have that going for him. That too is going to be a very interesting race.
Well, we'll be talking a lot more about this on election night. You and I will be on WLU-TV, West Liberty's local channel 14, and also people can watch that on the live stream online with WLU-TV's website. But it'll be fun to be on there on election night, talking to some of the candidates, the winning candidates in some instances, and following those election results that night.
Always a lot of fun to do that election coverage. We have a great deal of fun, and sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong, and usually we're there late into the evening.
Yeah. Well, Howard, thank you for being
on
the show.
All right, Jamie, thank you very much. Good to be here.
We need to take a break. When we come back, I'll be talking sports. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show. People in nursing homes are some of the most vulnerable members of our society. They're there because they can't take care of themselves. Those facilities have a duty to take care of our loved ones, and when they don't, it's important they're held accountable. We've not only collected record results against negligent nursing homes, but more importantly, we've helped so many families get the answers and closure they so badly needed.
Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Disasters happen. Pick the team that takes care of them all. Powered by offices in Wheeling, Morgantown, and Pittsburgh, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration is ready to handle any size emergency at a moment's notice. We have the right people, knowledge, and equipment to respond 24 hours a day.
I'm Dana Hogerson. When disaster strikes your home or business, tell your insurance provider you prefer the restoration company the Mountaineers call, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
Welcome back to the show. It's time to talk sports, and let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2 weeks into the season and still no win for the Steelers, and now 2 of the last 3 games the Steelers have played, the defense has given up over 40 points, losses in both of those games, and a tie to Cleveland sandwiched in between. And you know, really disturbing now. And this week, Antonio Brown, a no-show for team meetings on Monday, did show up on Wednesday for practice, and you know, supposedly will be disciplined in some way, not going to miss any game time, but no Le'Veon Bell still, and you know, people are saying, what's wrong? What's going on with the Steelers? Dysfunctional now. I mean, really nothing new. I mean, there have been distractions with Bell and Brown through the years, and I really don't see the offense as being the problem. I mean, they did score 37 points the other day. The defense is the problem. You know, 1 sack last week by a team that set a franchise record for sacks last year. You have to get after the quarterback. I don't care what level you're playing at, whether it's in the NFL, college, high school, or Pee Wee football. It doesn't really matter. You have to get after the quarterback, especially when there's an inexperienced quarterback, as Patrick Mahomes for Kansas City is. Instead, he set, you know, all-time NFL records for most touchdown passes through 2 games, etc., and looked like, you know, the greatest quarterback on earth, and maybe he will be. But you have to get after him, even if you want to get, you know, the experienced quarterbacks. You want to get after them. So now, you know, a Monday night game on the road at Tampa, who's looking better than a lot of people thought, but I think, you know, they're probably due for a loss. You know, Ryan Fitzpatrick has been playing quarterback, you know, kind of a journeyman while Jameis Winston's been out. And, you know, the Steelers traditionally play well on Monday night, but they need to establish the running game early this week. You know, they didn't have an opportunity to do much of that because it got into that big 21-0 hole last week, but also need to get Antonio Brown involved early, but with some short passes, not the low percentage plays down the field. Get him involved with some short passes, some wide receiver screens, get the ball in his hands that get him energized and focused in the right way. That'll open up the deep ball later in the game for guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Washington, and AB himself. I'd also like to see use of the running backs in the passing game a little bit more. Le'Veon Bell, 10th in the league in receiving last year, missing that component a lot, but get James Conner involved. Maybe get some of the other guys involved in the passing game. But more importantly, they'll come back to what I said. Got to get pressure on the quarterback this week. Got to send people. Can't just sit back and try to cover. You already have Joe Hayden out at corner last week. You got to get after the quarterback. I think they will. I think the Steelers win this game by 10 points and get on the right track and get a win. Let's talk college football. Last week highlighted by perhaps a big Ohio State win over TCU, Alabama awfully impressive, LSU with the last-second field goal. Some excitement last week. But now this week, let's shape it up for you. On noon, right here on ABC on WTRF, number 8 Notre Dame at Wake Forest. Brandon Wimbush and the Notre Dame offense have been very inconsistent. More interceptions than touchdown passes this year. And Stanford and Virginia Tech are up next after this one. Notre Dame needs to play a complete game. A noon start on the road I kind of like because the players don't have to sit around the hotel all day and wait. I think Notre Dame by 17 in this one. And at 3:30 right here on CBS on WTRF, number 22 Texas A&M at number 1 Alabama. A&M keeps it close for a while I think in this one, but not enough firepower for Jimbo Fisher in his first year there at Texas A&M. The Tide rolls in this one. And also at 3:30, Tulane at Ohio State on the Big Ten Network, and Tulane's just bad. Ohio State scores as many as at once in Urban Meyer's return, and they roll big in that one. Also at 3:30, Kansas State at WVU in the Big 12 opener on ESPN. Off week last week because of the hurricane for the Mountaineers. They're going to be ready to play in this Big 12 opener in Morgantown. Will Greer's going to have another big day, probably 400 yards or so passing. WVU by at least 2 touchdowns in this one. And then at 8 o'clock, number 7 Stanford at number 20 Oregon on ABC right here on WTRF. College game day there, a lot of hype. Oregon hasn't been tested yet, though, this year. Stanford had a tough win over USC, and the defense has only given up 23 points all year in 3 games. That's not many points. Bryce Love will be back at running back this week for Stanford, looking to energize his Heisman campaign. Stanford gets the road win. And my upset specials this week, Kentucky over number 14 Mississippi State, and Texas over number 17 TCU in the Big 12. I think Texas will get moving here a little bit. Win over USC last week kind of got them on the right track after losing to Maryland early in the year. That's all the time we have this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. Really enjoyed having Howard Monroe on. We'll see you again next week on the Jamie Bordas Show.